Okay, so I'm just opening the creation kit, and I'm using special edition version. By the way, I certainly recommend that you get Newcomb's fixes if you're using the 64-bit creation kit, because otherwise it is truly painful to use. And so I'm assuming that you want to make some kind of magic effect. Because you're interested in making a new spell or a new shout, a new scroll, a new potion, a new enchantment. And basically, the way that you're going to accomplish this will always involve, first of all, getting a new magic effect. So, in order to understand magic effects, it helps to see how Skyrim uses these magic effects for what it does uh, in the vanilla version. So basically, every magic effect, open up just any one, it will have naturally an ID and a name and an effect archetype. The archetype can be many different things. As with everything in the creation kit, it helps to explore. And so some of these are used pretty readily in game. So you have invisibility, you know that that's used in game pretty easily. Uh, Cure disease, that's used. Uh, Other things are left over from other earlier games, like Oblivion. So you have Dispel, but there's no Dispel uh, in Vanilla Skyrim.
Hello.
So, but in fact, if you use the Dispel effect, it will work. Other things like a reflect damage, I believe, is somewhere in here. That surprisingly works too, although not quite as in earlier games. The only way to really find out about a lot of these things is simply to experiment. And more than likely, you will want to use something that's more than just something that you'd find in vanilla. You may want to do a new fire damage spell or something like that, and that's fine. You can do that too. But there are other things that you are going to want the script for, and so writing a script for your spell usually involves things like on effect start, on effect finish, things like that, and you can do a lot with that. But we'll get to that later. There are different kinds of spells that are separated into three kinds by casting type. Concentration is used for things like flames and sparks when you have to hold a key down the entire time that you're casting the spell, or a ward. Uh, it's, as you know, not used that often in Skyrim, but it is important. Constant effect is used for things like abilities. A lot of the racial effects. So, for example, the High Elf has 50 extra magicka in Skyrim, so that's a constant effect, and it will be applied to self because there's delivery type too. So you have 5 different kinds of delivery types: self, contact, aimed, target actor, target location. And so basically, the abilities are usually constant effects on self. So this is his ability blank. It doesn't really do much of anything. It's not even used. It's just not sure what it's used for. But you have a constant effect on self for abilities. For alchemical uh, things that you have for a potion. And by the way, these little prefixes are not necessary for your spell to work. They're just there to kind of let you know, for convenience sake, what this magic effect is primarily used for. If you wanted to use this, for example, in an actual spell and not in a potion, it would still work. But you may be missing a few things for visual effects unless you made sure that it actually had them. So alchemical effects also involve delivery to self, because either the person who's taking them or the poison, it's still going to be applied to self. And they are a different kind, and they're not a constant effect. They're fire and forget. As basically you consume the potion once, you don't have to press any more keys. It lasts a certain amount of time and it's over. So it's called fire and forget because as soon as it's done, the effect will go forward, and unless you can dispel it in some way, it will finish in the usual way. In addition to alchemical effects, we have things like diseases. Maybe you want to make a new disease for a particular mod, and they're normally prefixed with a DIS. So diseases are always constant effects also, and their delivery form of this is contact. Now, it's interesting because for diseases, if you want to have a creature, for example, that's diseased, what's normally done is if you go to race, and let's do a skeever, and go to combat data, excuse me, attack data, you'll have various attacks. And these attacks, some of them have the disease ataxia that's attached just to actually this melee attack. When they go and they bite and things like that, there's a chance for them spreading this disease ataxia, and they don't have to do anything with magic or have any magicka for them to do this. Every time that they actually attack, this attack spell is cast, and so that is said to be on contact. So for a disease, something that you want to attach to a melee spell that is from the race itself. You can also do this and override this data for a particular NPC and have their attacks do something special. But you can add a spell that costs them no magicka that will always be cast whenever they perform this action. So that's for a disease. Go back to magic effects. So in addition to diseases, we have enchantments. And enchantments can be primarily of two types. You have armor enchantments and weapon enchantments. Armor enchantments, as you may suspect, since they offer some kind of buff, they are always constant effects on self. Because, say, it will increase your magicka or give you some kind of protection. And then you have enchantments that go on weapons. Enchantments that go on weapons are usually also of the contact type. Let's see if we can find a weapon. Or magicka. It is of this contact type, and it's fire and forget, because once you swing the weapon, or whatever, or fire the bow or whatever, it is cast, and the delivery system is from contact with that weapon. Food is something else you'll see. That's basically just like a potion, and so it's fire and forget on self. And voice powers and shouts, they are something that's different. Shouts in particular have a very unique structure. You there are words of power, and so in this magic effect, in this magic area, you have both words of power, and they have them all lined up here. You have 3. And then when you actually go to make the shout itself, you have to use those words of power and a specific spell. Now, once you have your magic effects, then you can take it to either a spell, a scroll, a potion, or whatever. So when you have a particular spell, so these are your abilities. So, for example, we'll have the ability of High Elf. I'm just going to, for the sake of, remove that for a moment. In order to get your spell, your magic effect, what you want, you have to tell the spell, the CK rather, both the casting type and the delivery. And when you go to add something, an effect, the only ones that will be available to you are the ones that have these 2 different types: the type of casting and delivery. Constant effect self, they're the only ones that will show up if you. So you have to know your magic effect and what it does in both casting and delivery if you want it to show up on your spell. And I don't want to save that because I don't want to change that. So are there any questions? Pretty basic.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I kind of showed up a little bit late on that, talking about the diseases affecting. Can we have abilities where they can sap magicka and other things like that in place of the disease?
You can. You can have other effects that they don't always even have to be contact.
Yeah.
They can be other spells too. But any spell that you put there will be cast every time that attack is given, and so you can have an attack that also has an absorb health, absorb magicka, absorb stamina, and it doesn't cost that creature any magicka to do that. Whenever it does that attack, that spell is cast.
Would cloak spells be a possibility there as well?
Not sure what you mean by cloak
Cloak
spells.
spells tend to envelop the character as it is
Oh,
cast.
I see what you mean. I don't know. I've never tried anything like that. You mean you wanted to basically extend the cloak?
Either extend
Or
or rerun the cloak
on
upon it.
yourself?
No,
Or on
upon
could
itself when it attacks.
hmm. It's normally whenever it attacks, it's basically going to be something that will be fired on whatever you
So
hit.
usually a target spell, not a self
Right.
spell. All
Yeah,
right.
I you can try it. It might work. There are some things that, you know, it depends on the engine really.
Yeah.
And it would definitely be worth trying if you wanted to, like, if you wanted to you wanted to make sure your frost cloak was always active, and so you wanted the something to recast its own frost cloak. It's possible it would work. I don't know. There are some workarounds for things. We just had in for Beyond Skyrim, just did Snow Wolf
Yeah.
that can't cast any magical spells, but we wanted to have an ice spike, and we wanted to cast. We wanted to shoot an ice spike at the first target it sees when it goes into combat, and also cast a cloak spell in itself. And so this is a really simple script that
Yeah.
I attached to the wolf, so that once when the combat state was changed, um, to one, it cast the ice spike at the target and also cast a cloak on itself. And you
So,
good.
would it be better in this case not to link it to an attack, but an ability that persists?
If you wanted a cloak spell, I mean, yeah, actually, it would probably be better that I think that this sort of method is probably something that you're looking for. That if you
Yeah.
wanted a cloak spell, and then you would just make sure that it could be a custom cloak spell that would, have a duration for as long as you'd like it to be.
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
mean, 3 minutes is probably long enough. You normally don't have.
Yeah, for combat phases.
Yeah, right. Okay. Any other questions?
Not for
Okay.
now. Pretty good.
So let's go on to spells, and here we have when you have a spell. One of the nice things about, well, actually, they're more about magical effects, but one of the nice things about spells is it can have more than one magical effect. And so, if we go, for example, to Firebolt, may have more than one. So, the Firebolt takes out some health. It has this stagger effect and can actually cause some fear in some enemies that it would be subject to, so that they may actually end up running away because they're so scared. And so you can have various magical effects, but the one that whose effects will be seen will be the first one. So if whatever you have for casting with your hands and things like that, that will be determined, I believe, by the first effect that you have. But you have a lot of other things that you see. Now, one thing on a disease, you see get random percent is less than or equal to 10. And that means that you have a 10% chance of this magic effect being applied when a spell that's based on this, which is the disease. Disease this is, it damages magicka. Whatever, it's so whenever a disease is cast from those attacks, because that's always how they're applied with an attack from the race. You have, it's not 100% chance that that the person being attacked, the NPC being attacked, is going to contract the disease. You limit that with this get random percent, and it's limited to 10% here. And I think there are some that have different percentages, but again, these effect archetypes, many times you'll see a peak value modifier, which will be, say a reduction in this case, magicka. It can be many different effects. Can be reduction in your health, reduction in particular skill. It can be, all these things. And actually, because it's a peak value modifier, if you want it to actually take away from and not add to whatever you're saying, so rather than magic being added, it's taken away, you must check this box for it to be detrimental. There are various flags that you'll see here. Hostile means that if you check that box and you hit an NPC that's, say, friendly in a town or something with a spell that's checkmarked as hostile, I think it counts as an assault. Uh, Detrimental, we covered. Recover means after this effect has been is no longer there, the value returns to its original value. So, for example, you had this disease where your magic was damaged. It's cast. You have it until the disease is cured, because it's a constant effect. And if you didn't check recover, even though the disease would be removed, you would remain with that damage to your magicka. So if it's, say, 10 points reduced from magicka and you didn't check recover, that 10 points would always be there. Now, if you're doing something like you're taking away health, you don't want it to recover. So if you had a poison, for example, that you wanted someone to an NPC that you poisoned to lose 30 points of health, well, after you're maybe it's, you can even do 10 points per second for 10 seconds, and then if you checked recover after that time, all that health would be returned, and so you wouldn't want that. You wouldn't want to check recover. But it depends what your effect is, whether or not you want to check recover. FX Persist. You may notice that when you hit a particular NPC with a spell, it will kind of glow with a particular shade of purple, if it's Soul Trap or something, various things. There are various visual effects. And if you want it to persist the entire time that your magic effect is going, you just hit the FX Persist. No recast. That's pretty self-explanatory, I think, that there are some spells. So say, for example, you have a Soul Trap, and your Soul Trap will last for 10 seconds. You hit an NPC with Soul Trap, and 7 seconds go by, and you hit the NPC again with a Soul Trap. Your first magical effect has not worn off, but you've recast the spell. So if you have no recast checked, that means it won't count, and you'll still only have 3 seconds left on your Soul Trap. If you're allowed to recast, it will set it back to whatever your original duration was for the spell, so you'll have another 10 seconds. No hit effect, so if you don't want anything to show once you've hit something, check that. No death dispel. Most spells are dispelled upon death, but if you wanted to persist for some reason. And then there are things like duration, magnitude, and area that are very important for spells. So the duration, of course, is how long it lasts. The magnitude will be how strong it is. Do you take 10 points of health away? Do you take 20 points of health away? Whatever. But some spells have no duration, like these constant effects. They'll have no duration. Some have no magnitude. So Soul Trap, again, has no magnitude. It's either on or it's off. You either have a Soul Trap effect going on or you don't. So there would be no magnitude for it. And then there are some spells that do have areas. So if you fire a flame spell, there are some flame spells that will take an entire area, or frost. I think those wind spells, they have a particular area. Painless. So if you have a spell that is going to have some kind of restoration effect, you want to check this box, because you don't want your NPC to react like you're killing it if you're giving it some health from healing hands or whatever. Gory visuals, obvious hidden UI. Hidden UI means that if you have this effect and you go to check what magic effects you have, you won't find it. So there are some times I think when you want hide in UI, but usually they're for tracking various things that you may add from one of your mods.
Quick question.
Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, if you were to do like a restoration spell and you unchecked painless, would that basically aggro the NPC?
It could. If you check hostile as well, I think it would. Skyrim, as we know, is an imperfect engine, and things don't always work the first time the way you want it to, and so a lot of it's about trying something, seeing if this works based on. I mean, reasonably, if you don't check painless and you check hostile, and you fire a spell, you would think it would count as an assault, and it should, but sometimes it doesn't. So there are other ways that there are workarounds that you have to try to find based on whatever it is you need your spell to do.
That makes sense. Thank you. Is there a reason you can think of for like a target spell that you would click no hit effect on?
Target? Probably not.
I feel like I have so many questions on this section, particularly just 'cause it's like so many options to play with.
Yeah, there really are. It's fun. I mean, that's what makes modding fun. If you didn't have to experiment and see if this works and try to find a workaround so it does exactly what you want it to do, it probably wouldn't be as much fun. I don't know. At least that's what I think.
I don't mean to hog questions for this section, but could you go over detrimental one more time?
Right, detrimental is important because, especially for your when you have a value modifier, and you can have both a peak value modifier and what you'll see is a dual if you want to have more than magicka, say magicka and health. So, and then you want to have the weight for the second one, say twice as much health as magicka, or as much, or half, or whatever. If you don't check detrimental, it will actually increase the magicka and increase the health. So that wouldn't be useful if you're trying to make something that's in the destruction school. You want to make sure that the spell does what you want it to do. Or if you tried to have armor that gave you 50 extra points of magicka and it actually took it away, that wouldn't be too good either. So detrimental removes it. If you don't have that checked, it will add to the value.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Let's look at another spell. Let's see. Courage. No, sorry, that one magic effect. So when we come over here to visual effects, the menu display object, of course, is just what you see when you open your menu. It's not really that important. There are some things like I think summon spells may have some. No, that doesn't either. Maybe maybe a bound sword or something. Bound bow. Yeah, that has a special menu display object, but it's just only appears when you open your Skyrim menu. Most magic effects have just a rather standard, they call magic hat marker. But visual effects are more fun. Visual effects are, what you see in game, and even though it's beyond the scope of what we're going to do today, a lot of these things can actually, you can make custom effects, which make your spells stand out. And naturally, the casting art is what you will see on your hands, this shock hands effect. So if you have shock damage, I'm sure everyone's used sparks and they've seen the kind of lightning effect that you get when you have your casting art. They have projectile, so exactly what it is that's going to you're going to shoot at your target, and then your impact data set. So what's going to happen to your data set, to your NPC once it's hit? What is that impact going to look like? You've seen the ice spike that kind of goes through and stays there for a while. Oops. Enchanting art, of course, is only for an enchanting shaders if you have an enchantment. So you probably are not going to use all of these things. Many times also your sound is very important too. Your draw sheath, your charge, your ready, your release. If there's a loop for concentration, have there. So both visual effects and sounds are a lot of fun, and they really make, because you definitely want your spell to function. I always make sure my spell functions first before I try doing anything else. If I try to take a vanilla magic effect and that most closely matches what I'm trying to do, and then duplicate it and modify it. But if I want to make it really stand out, I'll try to do something with this that makes it look unique. That's, again, secondary to it actually functioning. I need to know it functions before I want to worry about how pretty it looks. But once it functions, you can really make something look impressive if you have the right combination of even vanilla ones and also ones that you can make yourself that look good. Spell making is not really used. It's not really that important. These things here, these taper durations, taper weight, taper curve, base cross, and skill usage multipliers. There are no easy ways to determine what these should be. They seem to vary for every different school, and so this is why, for example, in vanilla Skyrim, things like Soul Trap and is so good for leveling conjuration, at least early, and Muffle is so good for illusion because of this skill use multiplier. And other spells that even cost more, you'd think they would be better at leveling, and they're not because of this skill usage multiplier. It's just something that you have to play around with if you want to use it at all. And the base cost, if you want to, whenever you have a spell, there's going to be a base cost that can be either auto-calculated based on, this thing here, this base cost of magnitude, duration, things like that, that it calculates. Or if you don't like that and you say, I don't like that, you can just actually tell the game that's too expensive or it's not expensive enough. And I'm going to set it to 50. And then finally, you've got the magic item description. So you tell, what it is, the lightning effect it does, mag, and that's in this little bracket like that, points of shock damage to health, and if you're doing something that is for a particular period of time, it is duration. and then it automatically will calculate that. So do invisibility and test concentrated effect descriptions. Caster is invisible for 30 seconds. That's based on what you've written here, and that's what will appear in game unless you override it and write your own description here in the spell effect. Any questions there?
Nope.
Good. Okay. So again, if we go to spells, you can have more than one spell, but they all must be of the same casting type and delivery method. They all have to be fire and forget and aim for this particular example. You can specify what you want. This is just a menu display, whether it looks like ice or flames or frost or whatever. You can tell it which hand you want it equipped in, either one, left hand, right hand. Can be a voice power. It can be both hands. Some of the master spells are with two hands. And if you want to apply a casting perk that will reduce the cost of your particular spell, you tell it what you want. Destruction 25, whatever. It can be destruction 50 if it's a different spell. There's illusion master, stuff like that. And this was both hands. But as I said, magic effects are for more than just spells. You can also have enchantments, and they can be fun. So you can enchant your armor. Again, it'll be various things here. Get rid of this for a second. If you want your armor, it's always going to be, I believe it's always going to be constant effect and self. And then for weapons, they're going to be fire and effect and contact. You also have staff enchantments. They're usually fire and forget aimed. Let's see, you have, of course, potions. Which, and food here usually counts as a potion because they're always fire and forget on self. You have potions that heal and potions that are poisons, but let's see, poison, damage, magicka. So they always have these effects. So this is alcohol damage, magic duration. And again, see, they're always fire and forget and self. And if you wanted to resist, forgot to mention this. This would, since this is a poison, you want a poison resist. For other things, you may want magic resist. Or resist fire. So you specify these things all in the magic effects. Any questions?
Not for me.
357. So any general questions or?
Well, yeah, for the dispel effect, you mentioned earlier that some of the effects do work and some of them don't. I know that open and I think lock don't work in the spell effects menu because that's just, yeah.
No,
But-
they definitely don't.
But one of my questions is, I know you said that dispel works, but at the same time, we go off of the keyword system now, right? For the
Yeah, you
dispel
can
effect.
add keywords to various spells, magic effects rather. So they have various keywords: magic, damage, fire, ritual, spell effect, spell dangerous. These keywords are used primarily for NPCs to make remarks, like that spell's dangerous. Be careful with those flames. All those things you hear, they're based on keywords, but they don't have any real effect on how the spell itself works. Any other questions or? Well, I don't want to run into. I think Pedro's next.
It's fine if you want to continue. But I eventually have to take over.
Eventually.
I just wanted to add one more thing too. So yeah, but also keywords are generally used I've read anyways that keywords are generally like more often now used for actual assigning effects based on like quest aliases and stuff. Considering before, like it's just more of a newer method of assigning effects and abilities that you normally couldn't with spell effects. If that makes any sense?
I don't know. Again, most of the time, you see these used in conditions. They could be spell conditions. That's true. Within a quest, but yeah, I don't see how they're really going to have any major effect on the spell itself. Hey, I'm open to learning too. So if there's something I don't know, that's fine.
That's the spirit. Because we are all here to become the all-modder, a magnificent modder creature. That's why I'm listening to you while doing 2D art. Oh, should I stop the recording? Or maybe I should stop the recording. Or are we still
Sure, it's
going?
4:00. I don't want to go into.